Hello, I'm Bridget Graves, and I've been sharing about my journey going through the various stages of grief. As I stated in my first video, I lost my son, Demetrius Graves, January the 28th of this year, and he died as a result of an asthma attack. The stage I'll be dealing with today is depression. Now, the stage of depression, in my experience, has been very hard. And as I stated before, grief is a very, I've lost my grandparents, which was very hard. I lost my best friend, which was extremely hard. But the loss of a child, there are just no words to express it, feels very unnatural. And it's a frightening journey, because I know in my experience, I truly thought that I was losing my mind. And it was just very hard to grasp until I read a book about grief and I started reading other parents their experiences on a couple Facebook groups, and that was extremely helpful because it helped me to understand that this was normal what I was experiencing, and I am not the only one that feels this way. So it helped me not to feel so bad about this experience and to have a better understanding, because I can tell you I was definitely overwhelmed and actually just became afraid of so many things. It's hard to explain. And being overwhelmed by all these different emotions, it just put me in a state of a very deep, dark depression. And something that I just couldn't understand is like other people telling me how I'm supposed to grieve. And that really bothered me because they're not living my experience. It's just like I can't tell someone else how to grieve because their experience may be totally different from mine. Their grief may not hit them right away as mine has hit me very hard. At first, I felt like I had a good grasp on it, but it's the simplest of things that can trigger memories of your child or your loved one that you've lost. And it's overwhelming. Um, Losing control or really understanding at the end of the day, you really don't have control over life. It just brought everything into perspective for me, and I just felt lost. And I did not understand how to deal with all of these things. And to be honest with you, I am still struggling with this stage. Even though I may laugh or smile, in my heart, it's just totally different because the thought of living in a world where my son is no longer, it's overwhelming at times. It really is. I mean, my son passed away at the age of 26. I had him when I was 26. And it's just hard to wrap my head around it. But I have found that like sharing these videos, it's helpful because I feel as if maybe if I help someone, if I can help someone to understand what they're going through, then then that helps me. Um, I have good friends that I can talk to. I have an aunt, my mom. I have a couple aunts that who have been very lovely, and I have cousins, and of course, like I said before, my mother, and it helps a lot. But the stage of depression, it's a tough one. I will tell you, as I've said in my previous videos, if you are feeling overwhelmed or going through what they call complicated grief, you need to get in touch with a professional. Reach out to your pastor, reach out to someone, but do not allow it to overwhelm you because it grief will take over your life. It really will. And one of the things I experienced was that I just felt so misunderstood. There are those who will think you um, lack drive and ambition and all of that, but what they don't understand is you are trying to survive emotionally, you're trying to survive mentally, you're trying to survive, you're just trying to understand and get over the shock of your loss, and it's extremely overwhelming. Doing these videos, I've intentionally just been raw. I've not put on any makeup and tried to, I'm giving you the rawness of how I feel. And I feel as if I've aged since my son has passed away because, going through the lack of sleep, and I didn't want to eat. And it was just so many different things. And I went through a period of not showing my emotions because I didn't feel safe around others, because I got tired of being told to basically get over it, which I feel is very insensitive. Or, people just have different things to say that they don't understand how hurtful it is. The only way you will understand is if you go through it. And my prayer is that you don't, because it's not something that you want to understand. I promise you that. I'm very thankful to my friends who did experience the loss of a child, who reached out to me, because the words that they shared with me was very helpful, because they understood what I was going through. Don't beat yourself up for feeling depressed, even if it's 10, 20, 30 years later and you're still feeling depressed. In my opinion, it's only natural. No, you don't want to be depressed 24/7. I think about my son every second of every hour. I do. I cannot help it. It's like when I wake up, he's the first thing on my mind. When I go to bed, he's the last thing on my mind. I wake up in the middle of the night. It's a constant battle. But what I do is I always ask the Lord to give me peace and to give me strength, and just to be with me, and that has helped me so much, because that's the only way I have been able to make it. If I didn't have my faith, I don't know where I would be. There are days that I do allow myself to feel depressed. I try not to wallow in it, but I have to cry. I have to release it, and I feel that it helps me. But what I do is I may try to watch a comedy that I like, and read. I like to exercise. I'm a personal trainer. I just try to do different things that will take my mind away from it. Sometimes my devotions are extremely helpful. Every time I read about the resurrection of Christ, that there's so much hope in that, because it gives me the hope of knowing that I will see my son again. In fact, the room that I'm in, this is now my home office. This was my son's bedroom. And I actually find it to be the most peaceful room in the house, which is very different from how I felt in the beginning of this journey. At first, I couldn't even bring myself to come in this room. And for about, I would say, a good month or so, I kept the door closed. And when I would come in, I just felt cold all the time. There was a coldness that I had after my son passed away that didn't leave me for a long time. And every time I walked into his room, I would feel that way. It took me about, he passed away on a Thursday. I did not walk into his room until that Sabbath. And I remember I asked my ex-husband to walk in with me. I just did not want to, for some reason, I just needed someone to do that with me. And then after his funeral, I remember coming back in here the day after the funeral. And it was very hard, but little by little, I would come into the room, and, um, clearing his clothes out was a very tough journey. And that in itself was very depressing. But then I found he wrote all the time, and I found things that he wrote that were so uplifting and so encouraging. In fact, I stuck a couple of those things in my Bible. And, I just had to deal with it, because I feel that if, his clothes, I had to deal with the reality of the situation that he was gone. There was someone that wanted the clothes, which I was very grateful for. I kept a few pieces. I had to be very intentional of not making a shrine, if that makes sense. I kept some of his clothing. I washed everything, and there were some things I could still smell him in them, and there was a comfort in that. I kept some of those things, and I decided I would make his room my home office. And the way I laid it out, I tell myself this is a room he would have liked in if he had lived to be 30. This is a room I think he would have appreciated at the age of 30. But the sunlight that comes into this room, it's so beautiful and it's so peaceful. And it's just amazing to me that I could get to a point where I come in this room to sometimes I just come in here and just sit and just look out the window, and it helps me. I kept one bookshelf with his books, which he loved to read, and his some of his things that I thought were his favorite things. He had a pair of soccer slides that I absolutely hated. He drove me crazy with them. We went to Jamaica, he wore them. We went to visit my mom in Hilton Head, he wore them. And when I was clearing his stuff out, for some reason I just could not bring myself to do that. And I made the intention, when I spoke to my son and my daughter about it, they said, Mom, please don't throw those away. My ex-husband agreed too, and I kept them. Someone told me I should put them in a shadow box, and I'm thinking about doing that. But right now I have them on a bookcase. And every time I look at them, I actually laugh because it's like God has a sense of humor. I tell myself that all the time. His time here was short, but I'm thankful for the 26 years that God gave me with him. To those of you who are listening, I will tell you, and everyone's experience is different, but having faith, um, it's my reading of the Bible. The morning that my son passed away, I was actually, I did a devotion that morning and it was on death. And I just had a bad feeling that whole morning. But I look back and I feel that God had been preparing me to deal with what was coming. I've never questioned God in this process. In fact, I do believe God was merciful to my son because I look back at pictures of him before he passed and he looked extremely tired. He was a smoker, unfortunately, and smoking and asthma do not go together. And there were times when he would be extremely pale. And I look back now and I realize what was happening to him. You will always miss your loved one, and you will always feel a sense of sadness and unhappiness. As you can see in my videos, I can't bring myself to smile. But I can tell you that this happened in January, and it's now September. I'm functional, and I grasp the reality of my life and my situation. And as my cousins told me, my new reality, it's not easy. Whenever I start to feel really low again, I do try to reach out to others. Sometimes, at times, I need that time to myself because I don't need to hear anything that will hurt me or upset me. I have to build a wall around myself sometimes to protect myself. But I am thankful for those who I'm able to reach out to. A couple weeks ago, a church brother passed away, and it was very sudden, and it triggered a lot of the sad feelings. I'm sorry, but I struggled. I went to the funeral yesterday, which was very hard because the last funeral that I went to in my church was my son's funeral, and it was very, very hard. But I thought back to a couple who they had lost their daughter, They lost their daughter a few years ago, and they came to my son's funeral. And I really did appreciate that. I don't think they will ever understand how much it meant to me. And that taught me something, because sometimes you have to think of others and not just think about yourself. So that's what pushed me yesterday to go to the funeral, which I really did want to be there. And I am very glad that I went. And it's like these little challenges, they're hard. But at the end of the day, it's about being intentional and making the effort to overcome. Depression is hard. It's like a pit that swallows you up. But at the end of the day, we do have a choice in whether we choose to stay in that pit or not. I've made a conscious choice that I don't want to stay in the pit. It's not honoring my son's memory, and it won't bring him back. I will allow myself to feel sad when I do feel sad, and when I do get depressed, I will make the conscious effort of not getting to a point of being in that pit and being swallowed by it, because it's horrible. It really and truly is. This has been, for some reason, this has been the hardest video. And I think it's because everything is so raw from the funeral yesterday of my friend that passed away, and the suddenness of it. He was only 46. Um, but what I can do is I will just continue to do what I feel God has called me to do, and not give up. I know there are others who may have given up on me, but at the end of the day, I can never give up on myself, and I would not be honoring my son's memory if I did that. Um, this is my son, Demetrius. I keep this on my desk now. At first, I wasn't even able to do that. I had one in the Bible, and it took me a long time to stick it in my Bible downstairs. I have a family Bible where I keep these things. And the other day, I was like, you know what? I want to be able to look at that smile. I have a picture of him by my bed when he was younger. And I'm not trying to run away from the memory of my son. I enjoyed the memories that made me laugh. And there were memories that made me sad, but they're memories just the same. Grief is overwhelming, but I will tell you that don't run away from it. You have to feel the pain to move past it. I don't know if that makes sense, but it does get better. No, there are things that will trigger the tears, bring the emotion out, but sometimes that's a good thing. Um, as I said, when I'm finished with these videos, I do plan to share a video that I made a few days after my son passed away, and you will definitely see a difference in me. It gets better. Death is a part of life, unfortunately, and it's just the reality of things. And depression is a tough stage, and it will be a hard one, and it's one that will always come back from time to time, and it's simply how you choose to deal with it. And I will end with saying, if you are struggling in this stage or any other stage of grief, reach out to your pastor, reach out to a friend, a relative, get professional help, but don't hold on to this pain and don't suffer alone. Take care and have a great day.